evening. Welcome everyone to our NMUG meeting, Wednesday meeting for November 30, 2022. I'm your host and MC, Dan Wassink. Our goal here at NMUG is to foster community, to share and help each other. We want to entertain and inform you with the weekly meetings. We also want to help you with your Apple devices through informative classes that are starting in January. And we're going to have more on that at the end of our presentation. You can now sign up for these classes. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. We also like to help each other through Groups.io. If you have a question on anything, go to Groups.io. And then, you can ask a question and hopefully we'll be able to help you out with that. You can find the latest information on our website, naplesmug.com, as well as sign into Groups.io. Every member has a membership with Groups.io, and that's where you can go and ask your questions. Anyone can sign up. Just go to naplesmug.com and Mike will forward that on to the powers that be and take care of everything. So get you signed up. A couple of announcements here. Our holiday gifts video is now online, so you can find that on YouTube. Just go to our website and go to the meetings, and you'll be able to find the video on there. There's a lot of good tips in there, a lot of good ideas, I should say, not tips, but a lot of good ideas for different gift giving. And we have our president, Eckert. He's going to join us more towards the end. I'm sorry, Eckert, I'm just going to skip over here and you'll join us more at the end and talk about the classes a little bit. We have class registration is now open. Again, we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. We have Sheeta keeping us all in line. And then our topic and speaker today is with Michael Rose. He's going to be talking about great software demos, the things that you can do to, when you demo software, you're trying to sell some ideas or trying to show someone how to do something. What are some tips, including he's going to show off a couple of different apps that may help when you're demoing software via Zoom or whatever. So we're going to turn that over to Mike, and then Mike, it's all yours.
Fantastic. Well, I guess I'll get started. Thank you all for being here. I want to give a special shout out to one of my former colleagues, David Winograd, who is hiding somewhere in the Brady Bunch grid. There he is. I see with his beard and his straw hat. David, good to see you. And I'll explain how we work together in a moment when I get into the presentation. Let's see if we can. I'm going to turn that off, turn this on. Can everybody see my screen?
Oh, Mike's ready to go.
Yes, we can. Yes. All right. Everyone else can, except for David, can you mute your microphones? Natalie, John, can you mute your microphones for me, please? Craig, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. This has sort of been a long time coming together and sort of bubbling together, this conversation. And what I'm going to talk about today is actually based on a presentation that I gave at MacStock in Illinois this summer. So if I reference warm weather or or the bucolic Illinois countryside, that's why. Not because I don't know where Naples, Florida is. By the way, I'm particularly happy to be talking to a mug based out of Florida, as my father is from Miami, and currently he and my stepmother live in Jacksonville. So I have some roots in the Sunshine State. So we're going to be talking today about software demonstrations and actually the professional job of software sales and sales engineering. Some of you may have heard of this before. Some of you may be thinking to yourself, I've never heard of this before. I'm going to explain a little bit about what it is and how to deliver a great software demo. And in fact, why you might want to be capable of doing this, even if you don't do software demos professionally. There are lots of opportunities, especially for, I imagine, the folks here on the call today who are, I'm going to guess, within your family, within your community, maybe even within your job, you are the head nerd in charge. You are the person people come to for support, for help, for explainers, and you might want to have some of these tools in your toolkit. So when you talk about software demos, and specifically to this audience, we have to talk about the greatest software demo of all time. Of course, this is the introduction of the iPhone, and what Steve Jobs did was a demo for sure, but he was also introducing a brand new product category, and really explaining what we call the "what's in it for me" for a global audience, not just the people in the room there at Macworld. I will state for the record, I was not there. I did not attend Macworld in 2007. I was listening. 2007? Yeah, that's right. I was listening on the phone. My colleague, Laurie Duncan, was in the overflow room shouting to me over a BlackBerry. And as she said, "They're calling it iPhone," I could hear the crowd, just like the noise of the crowd behind her, which was amazing. This was before they live streamed the keynote. So the only people that got to see that live, if I recall correctly, were the ones who were physically in the room. But we can't all be Steve Jobs. We can't all have an incredible army of support, of producers. We can't all have a product that just barely works and is held together with paper clips and duct tape to go out and introduce a brand new product category. We have to, for showing software, for showing products, we have to maybe improvise a little bit more. We have to be more self-sufficient. And also, we may have to lower our standards a little bit compared to what Steve was able to do with that presentation. But behind that iPhone demo, among the people that I mentioned were sales engineers or solution engineers, technical pre-sales professionals, people whose job it is to make a demo run. And that is actually the job that I do today. That is the industry I work in. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. To introduce myself, perhaps I should have done that at the beginning. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Rose. I'm based here in New York City. I introduced my family a little bit. That is my lovely wife, Heidi. On the left, we've been married for 23 years. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yes, give or take, 23 years. Mm-hmm. And she is a congregational rabbi here in New York City, in Brooklyn. She has a congregation in Flatbush. And we have two lovely children, Hanalina, who is 21 on the top, and Shoshana, who is 18, recently, actually just turned 18 this month. And both of them are college students. So this is, you're getting, of course, also the three ages of beards here, from clean shaven to Miami Vice to Linux open source project committer neckbeard effect there. That is the full neckbeard. I've with this family, and I have been the main breadwinner in my family for John Landis. That I don't ever get that one. That's interesting. I get John Lennon sometimes, Johan, not John Landis, but thank you. I think actually yes, with the full facial hair, I can see where you're coming from with that. So I started my journey as a technologist way back in the mists of time, and I'm gonna make an assumption just by glancing across the faces that I see on the screen, that many of you actually remember the 1990s, or possibly even the 1980s, the 1970s, or the 1960s. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the 1990s. In the late 80s and early 90s, I began my career at a company called Time Incorporated, which no longer exists. It has been, it was acquired, it was merged, it was purchased. Most of the magazine titles that you would associate with Time Inc. now were bought by a company called Meredith. Certain of them now are owned by other individuals or investors, and one in particular, Time Magazine, is owned by Mark and Lynn Benioff. Mark Benioff, of course, the CEO a co-CEO and chairman of Salesforce, and I am sitting here in the Salesforce office in New York City today because that is where I work today. And the Time Magazine offices are in this building in New York on the same elevator bank, which is surreal to me. So yes, in the late 80s, early 90s, I began my career at Time Inc. I'm going to highlight a couple of individuals. That's Greg Ruiz, Harry Wilson, and my brother Rich Rose. All three of those guys were my colleagues in the early 90s at Time Inc. All three of them were working at Salesforce within the past few years. So the lesson is be careful what practical jokes you play on your colleagues early in your career when you're young and stupid, because you will have to work with these people again. So moving on from my start at Time Inc., I was working with a small software division called P Inc., working on editorial apps built with Quark Express for the Mac. And that was very early on in the sort of emergence of a professional desktop publishing business, professional desktop publishing enterprise for magazines and newspapers. Because up to that point, most newspapers, certainly all the Time Inc. magazines, were produced using proprietary apps, proprietary solutions, mostly running on mini computers. So Time, Sports Illustrated, Fortune, Life, Money, People, and most of the other magazines, New York-based magazines, were using a solution from Atex, which ended up being owned by Kodak, I think, later on. But Atex was an editorial system that was that involved dumb terminals that were all talking to a mini computer. And the advantage of a solution like that is that it was smart, even though the terminals were dumb, in that it allowed editors and writers to write to fit. The number of column inches, the layout that that their text was going to be poured into, was accurately represented in the pagination, the justification, the hyphenation. All the sort of layout engine capabilities were baked into that Atex system, so that the editorial folks could work without being directly in the layout. They also used a PC application called Xywrite, if anyone remembers Xywrite. Extremely powerful, no GUI, all keyboard driven. And early on, we worked on this solution from a company called P Inc. to try to drive the editorial teams and the production teams toward desktop publishing. But what they needed an app that could translate Quark Express layouts into the available space that editors could use. And so initially it was the solution from P Inc., which was a German company. If you've used or been exposed to the Quark publishing system or Adobe's InDesign and InCopy paired applications, those are the successors to P Inc. Not literally, the technology did not go anywhere, but in terms of the job that they are doing, Quark publishing system basically came in and took over the magazine production business there. However, I moved on to Entertainment Weekly, which is a Time Inc. property. Entertainment Weekly was always done on desktop, had never really bought it. When it was founded, it was sort of at the tail end of the Atex era. So it was built from the ground up to be built on Macintosh, and that's where I started my desktop, my magazine specific career. Got to work on a lot of amazing projects. Got to work on some fun stuff there. Was running the IT side, ended up running the new media side, launching the magazine on AOL and on the web, and got to work on this incredible special issue, which was our Star Trek, I think maybe the 30th anniversary. Somewhere it was when the film Generations was coming out, so that was the first crossover film between the original series and Next Generation, and so we had a tremendous amount of fun. And I got the best editorial assignment I ever had, which was calling up a linguistics professor and hiring him to translate Hamlet's "Alas, poor Yorick" soliloquy back into the original Klingon. That's a weird phone call. If you ever have that phone call, it's a strange phone call. Anyway, great time at Entertainment Weekly. I eventually moved over to a different title at Time Inc., which was Life magazine. And again, those of you who remember Life fondly, the weekly Life was out from the 1930s into the 1970s. Weekly Life ceased regular publication in 1972. From 72 to 76, the magazine existed as special issues and commemoratives. And then from 76, was published as a monthly. So I worked at the monthly Life for 4 years, from roughly 1996 to 2000. Got to work on things like the Millennium issue, which was super fun, and just had a great time until 2000, where when Life magazine folded. The monthly Life was ended, and now again exists only as special issues and commemorative issues. But the brand is still alive. The business is not. I left the magazine industry at that point in 2000 and went to work for a company that was part of WPP, which is called MJM Creative Services, and that's focused on event production, corporate training, sales meetings, product launches, pharmaceutical launches, really sort of managing the interaction between brands and their audiences, usually internal audiences, also some exhibit and trade show work as well, but mostly internal audiences, internal marketing. And great fun there, incredible place to work. Got to do a lot of work at a place called Deloitte University, which is Deloitte's training facility based in Westlake, Texas, which is great, and had a wonderful time and learned about communication and brands and sales, and so eventually took all that experience to my next role. But while I was doing that, I worked at a little place called TUAW in my spare time, and that's where David Winograd and I became acquainted. TUAW, for those who remember it fondly or otherwise, was AOL's Apple-focused blog, founded as part of Weblogs Inc. by Brian Alvey and Jason Kalkanis. And I worked there for from late 2006 until it folded as well, and had a wonderful opportunities there, incredible people, so much fun, the best part-time job you could ever have. Got to meet incredible, smart, talented, fun folks. Went to Macworld, ended up as a talking head on television, which was an super unlikely thing to have happen. But I did in fact end up as a tech commentator on a business cable network for some time. I don't know why someone didn't tell me to get a haircut before I went on television that day. But anyway, so all that came together, and in 2013, I left the event production industry and came to work here at Salesforce. And at Salesforce, I stepped into a role called solution engineering, or sales engineering. What even is that? What is that? Nobody knows. No one outside the business actually has any idea what that is. So when we think about what sales engineering, technical pre-sales means, sometimes your family might think you're constantly on a plane and you're traveling hither and yon and just going to customers and eating food that's bad for you and drinking too much and carousing. One of the main stakeholders for the sales engineering role is sales reps, account executives, salespeople, and the job is actually a partnership with the salesperson. So technical sales, software sales, technical product sales often involves this give and take of someone who is the primary relationship manager with the customer, and someone who is the product expert, the solution expert, the subject matter expert, the domain master, who is going to help the customer understand what it is that we're actually selling them, what it is we're actually proposing that they do or that they invest in. So that can be pretty high production values, and when things go well, it feels like a Broadway production. It feels like the pyrotechnics are going off and the Vera lights are moving around. Of course, the alternate side of that is what happens if it doesn't go well. Maybe we're talking about the audience kind of snoozing everybody's sort of having a miserable time. And by the way, I'm highlighting something here which you can't see, which is well, when we talk about demo tools, I'll explain that in a minute. My boss doesn't really think I'm always at the bar, but maybe I should ask him, what do you think I do all day? On my best days, I think of myself as sort of the Steve Jobs character, someone who's telling an amazing story, who's presenting technology in a way that's compelling, that is playing to the emotions and the needs of that audience. But what I really do is I do a lot of presentations. I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of what you might call interviewing or requirements gathering, what we refer to as discovery. And it is a customer-facing role. So it's really about helping our customers, and in my case, Salesforce's customers, understand the value of our solutions, figure out exactly how the pieces fit together for them, creating. We try not to use the words proof of concept, although sometimes that's kind of what it is, but a demo, which is representative, not an exact match, not a clone, not a faithful replication of the implementation they're eventually going to get, but something that's going to give them the feeling of where they're headed, and presenting it hopefully with a story, with confidence, with data, and with a value baked into it as well. So this is, by the way, the best job in the world. I felt incredibly fortunate in my 40s to discover a whole industry or discover a whole career path that I was not aware of prior to coming to work at Salesforce. Looking back on it, remember back in the 1990s, I mentioned that time at Time Inc. When I have to rebuild this whole thing. Don't do what I did. Don't force your audience to sit through the animation. But I can't reach the keynote controls because they're behind the Zoom controls. What I was doing very early on in that software role at Time Inc. was I was doing software demos. I was getting customer requirements. I was showing them what things would look like. It was a tiny slice of the job, or maybe not so tiny, but it was a slice of the job. It wasn't the whole job. If someone had said to me in 1991 or 1992, hey, Mike, this software demoing thing, that's a career. That's a job that people do. Excuse me. That's a job people do. It's a profession. It may have been at the time a nascent profession in the sense of technical pre-sales, but it's a profession. I could have saved 20 years, although I might not have gotten to where I am. I might not have had the experience and the confidence and the necessary resources to do what I do today. But it is interesting that I was doing solution engineering, sales engineering, pre-sales, technical pre-sales back in the early 1990s, and it took 22 years for me to get back to that place and have it be my job. And it is fantastic, and it's the best job in the world. And one of the things I love about it is the ability to go to customers, get in front of them, get in a room, hear what they have to say, hear their anxiety, understand that, listen to what they're saying, look at their body language, get up in front of a whiteboard, get up in front, show them something, get that real-time feedback, that reaction. That's an incredible validation, incredible rush. Unfortunately, 2020 happened. We did not see that coming. But of course, in February and March of 2020, this entire discipline, this entire thing that we do had to become virtualized, had to go online, like this conversation that we're having right now. And that was super challenging. We started to try to figure out, how do we do whiteboarding, for example? How do we do effective discovery? How do we understand how people are feeling, what they're doing? Those are some pretty adorable dogs, but seeing people on a screen is not the same as being in person with them. We had to adapt to new tools. In fairness, we had been doing some of this all along, but it was the difference between being in a room where 10 people are in person and 2 or 3 are on WebEx or Zoom or Google Meet, and everybody's remote and you're sitting there in your sweatpants, and in some cases in your closet. For those folks, my colleagues in New York City, who had to pivot to working from home in early 2020, many of them were working from a laundry closet or a hallway, just because of the sheer lack of space that they had. So incredible challenges. We worked through it. We continue to adapt and evolve, and we've learned a few tricks along the way. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Any questions so far before we dive into some of the more specifics of demoing?
None. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned earlier this idea of what's in it for me, WIFM for short. Whenever we're trying to convince anybody of anything, whether it's Chinese versus Thai for dinner, or go to the parade versus go shopping, part of that calculus is always sort of the what's in it for me. What are we trying to, what do we expect as an outcome? What is the feeling we're going to have? And in fact, a lot of sales, and particularly technical sales, product sales, sales to sort of engineering-centric sales or IT-centric sales, we think of as being driven by rational, evaluation, feature function. Here's my checklist. Here's the requirements. Does it meet them? And the fact is that's not how most decisions get made, even buying decisions. It's not necessarily driven by rational considerations. They are there. You have to clear that bar most of the time, that functional bar. But then it comes down to, what is the experience? What is the day-to-day experience? What is the sort of before and after? This is your day. This is your day on my product. And that's why it's important for those demonstrations to drive emotional response, or to seek out that emotional response. You don't need to be, no one needs to walk away from a demo saying, I laughed, I cried, it was better than cats. It doesn't hurt if they do, but nobody needs to do that. But they do need to figure out, we do need to figure out a way to connect to that group of stakeholders on an emotional level. And at this point, I'll introduce my first warning flag, my first yellow card. The urge, and this comes up in personal demos when you're trying to explain something to a family member or to a colleague or to someone you met on the street. The urge to go to, oh, I love this part. Oh, let me show you my favorite piece. Look at this. Isn't this cool? That's not relevant if it's not connected to a specific need, a pain point, a challenge, a job to be done, or a day in the life of the person you're talking to. The example I use here is password management. So virtual show of hands, Zoom show of hands, how many of you have tried to convince someone in your life, in your family, among your friends, your significant other, your spouse, to start using a password management app like 1Password, iCloud? I see some hands coming up.
Yes.
LastPass, Dashlane, yep. Thumbs up, thumbs down. How did that conversation go? Thumbs up for great, easy. They started it immediately. Thumbs down for it took a while for you to sell them on this idea. Thumbs down. Yeah.
Thumbs down.
I see
Yes.
I see some sad faces too. Debbie is grimacing. Joan is sad. Ferrer says it did not go well. Douglas and Elliot is the one person who says it was cool. It was a cool conversation. Marty said not so great. I kind of want to ask Elliot like how it was cool, but there's Travis saying sad as well. One of the sad faces, Joan or somebody else, or Travis, tell me what did not go well? Why did that go sideways?
Joan or Travis, go ahead, on the mic yourself.
I see Joan is unmuted, so go ahead.
Yeah, and one of them is a programmer, just will not do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I see some of the passwords that they use, and they're just, They reuse them. They don't care. And he knows how to fix a computer. That's all I can say. Of course, he's on a PC, so it probably doesn't make any difference anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, the government's already reading his email.
Right.
So what does it matter? Fascinating. Does anyone else have the challenge story that they want to share real quick of like how that ended up being hard?
Travis, do you have one?
Sure.
Go for it.
I'm an educator, or I was, and the teachers they've great idea, but then putting into practice just took time, and out of sight, out of mind. One day, then another, and then you're like, okay, back to square one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'd like to jump in on that too.
By all means.
My biggest issue with educators is that teachers, we don't do that. We don't want to do that. They don't want to do it.
Yeah.
They have told me they don't want to do it.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
They don't. And so educators are an interesting constituency and sort of demographic here. Folks who work at nonprofits, volunteers, docents, church and synagogue boards and councils. These are people who they have more needs than time. Teachers, especially, and healthcare professionals, nurses, people who have you can explain to them, I'm telling you, this is going to make your life simpler. This is actually going to you're going to invest a little bit of time and energy and aggravation. The Yiddish word of tsuris comes in here. It's like, this is going to cost you some tsuris. You're going to feel aggravated and you're going to be annoyed that you have to change. But I'm telling you, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're mixing Yiddish and Irish, but you get my point. So you all have had, most of you have had that experience of trying to convince somebody, that there is value here, that there's a payoff for you. And the problem is that we stumble over, let me show you what I think is so cool. Let me show you how 1Password can generate the codes for you. Like, you scan this QR code and then it generates the codes for you. You don't need to get text messages or call the bank every time you need to log in. Mom, I'm not naming names, but mom. Let me show you how this can automatically capture your passwords on your phone, and you don't have to, it's too much aggravation. The touch ID doesn't work, or Face ID doesn't work for me. I'm like, how can Face ID not work for you? You have the same face. I was working with a consultant client over the summer, and I was doing a laptop migration for him, so I needed sort of all his passwords in one place. And he pulled out a loose leaf binder where there were pages alphabetized, like every letter of the alphabet had a page, and on each of those pages was written the passwords for that service. So and it actually provided sort of like negative feedback as well. So I needed to know if he had a Quicken password. So I went to the Q page and there was nothing there. I'm like, I guess you don't have a Quicken account. Like, everybody has their system, and you don't want to force change for change's sake. But the fact is, you need to start with the what's in it for me. Hey, I know you've been frustrated, or I know you have problems because you change stuff and you don't write it down. So what this will do for you, what this will do for you, and create that future state where they're like, oh, I get it. This is where I want to be. Yes. Everybody understands. Everybody acknowledges there's going to be some pain. Change comes with pain, or discomfort, discomfiture, feeling out of sorts, feeling like, oh, this is weird. Yeah. But the only reason to go through that is when you know that there's a better, more sustainable, more flexible state at the end of it. And look, bless your heart, you're keeping track of your husband's passwords. That is a thankless job, but someone has to do it. So thank you for doing it. So this brings us to this sort of concept of the concentric circles, the why, how, and what. I'll give you the link to Simon Sinek's TED Talk here. We're not going to go too deep into it, but I am going to mention that and I don't want to show it. I could show it, but I'm going to skip over it because we're probably not going to have time. Simon Sinek talks about the the approach to helping people understand or convincing people that they should change, that they should invest, they should buy something. And the sort of two ways of looking at this, we have Ford or Apple. Most companies, let's say it's Ford, start with what? They start from the outside in. What do? We're Ford. We make amazing cars. Best cars made in America. They're great. How do we do it? Union labor, 100 years of experience, incredible designers, customer, quality is job one, great focus. Why do we do it? Because we fundamentally believe that a strong American auto industry is essential to the future of our country and to our economic health. And we think that, customers want to be part of that story. It's a perfectly reasonable way to talk about your product, but you're starting from the what, which is we make cars and trucks from the outside in. And what Sinek talks about is flipping that around and starting with why. And actually, he has a book called Start With Why. And that's that he suggests that this is what Apple does. Why do we do this? We are Apple. Fundamentally, we believe that we can make a better world by putting incredible tools, incredible creative tools, incredible power, and incredible tools in the hands of everyone, and that there is creativity and there is incredible capability in everyone, and we believe in helping move the world forward that way, and that is why we think different. How do we do it? A relentless focus on on user experience, on design, making sure that we are not following the herd, but we are delivering on what we think is what we believe, what we firmly believe is the right thing for customers, and making it easy, delightful, beautiful whenever possible. What do? We make computers, phones, headphones, cloud services. You want to buy one? Want to use it? And so that's his approach to talking about this, starting with why. When you're demonstrating something, whether it's a garage door opener or a multi-million-dollar piece of software, you want to start with why. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to help you connect. We believe that you can connect with your customers better. We believe that you can learn to play guitar. We believe that there's an artist inside everyone. Fundamentally, it's about it's not about tying the product or the solution to what the customer is interested in. It's about tying the brand. The brand is the promise that anybody or any company makes to its customers. This is what we commit to. Commitments are driven by why, not by what, not even by how. They're driven by why. How can be incredibly difficult. Ask Tim Cook. Tim Cook, who before he became the CEO of Apple was responsible for Apple's supply chain and overseas offshore manufacturing, and had to regularly do the impossible. The how is fungible. The how can change. Even the what is fungible. I mean, you could ask Twitter that. And you may notice from my video, I've got my Mastodon handle in my video, but it's this Mike T. Rose everywhere, LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere. So in case you're looking for me, how is fungible? Why is immutable? If you change your why, you're changing your identity. You're changing the identity of your company. You're changing the identity of your organization. But you can always change the how, and it's very easy to do. What is innovation? Like adding a new what is a new product, is a new solution, is a new capability, it's a new feature. What is bubbling? What has like a quantum indeterminacy in a foam? All the time, the what is changing. The how changes less frequently. Like if you're changing the how, I mean you have to, but that involves transformational pain and discomfort. Why? You need to be very careful changing your why. You change your why, and that's when people show up and say, "You're not the person I married." Well, maybe you are. So that I'm not going to play Simon's video, but I do recommend it. It's on YouTube as "How Great Leaders Inspire Action." We'll make sure everybody gets the link afterward. So how do you convince somebody that your why is valid and that your how is workable and that your what is valuable? Well, one of the ways you do is you tell them a story. You create a story around this demonstration, this product. And one of the things we do here at Salesforce, and we borrowed it from Pixar, and it's famously the Pixar story spine. So once upon a time, there was a cowboy doll, and he lived, and every day he hung out with the other toys in Andy's room, and they had a wonderful community until one day a space toy showed up and everything went sideways. And because of that space toy, Woody the doll was lost and had to be rescued. And because Woody was lost, Buzz the space toy and the rest of the toys had to go on a madcap adventure to find him. And because of that adventure, they realized that their greatest strength was each other until finally Woody was rescued, everybody saved the day, and things were back as they should be. And ever since then, Woody and Buzz are an unbreakable pair of pals who nothing is beyond them to infinity and beyond. Everybody recognizes the story of Toy Story. That's the Pixar story spine, except it's not Pixar's. Pixar stole it or borrowed it. A guy named Ken Adams, who was the director of a theater company and wrote a book about this, is actually the person who codified this story spine as a theatrical tool and as an improvisational tool, and talks about it in his book. But this is great and actually helps people understand every piece of that concentric circle: the why, the how, and the what. It's a little bit heavy. It's a little bit of work to do this, and nobody needs to. I mean, if you would like to tell a full story to your family members who you want to start using 1Password, awesome. I want to hear those stories. I want to see those stories put up on stage, acted out, and shown. But it's not necessary most of the time. You can get away with a light story approach. So maybe what you're showing doesn't need that full Hollywood approach, but you can still put yourself in the persona, in the character. It's like, okay, I'm Anne's husband, and I'm frustrated because I can't log into the Blue Cross website because I changed my password 3 weeks ago, but I wrote it down the wrong place, or Anne's not home and she's got the list, and so but I remember that that I started putting stuff into LastPass and so forth. So you can still put yourself into that persona, into that character, and this is actually what design thinking or user stories drive. As a blank, I want to achieve this. As the executive director of a nonprofit, I want to be able to see my donations all in one view. As the as the assistant principal of this school, I want to be able to send notifications to all the parents in a given class. Like whatever the job to be done is, you put the persona together with the job to be done, and that's a user story. That's the design thinking perspective. So that's very helpful in demos because you can get closer to the pin, you can get closer to the target, the bullseye, if you are thinking about, okay, what does this mean for me in my day-to-day experience? And that doesn't require you to tell an entire end-to-end once upon a time story to do that. It doesn't hurt, but you don't need the whole thing. So any questions? We're going to dive into some sins and some tools and some other stuff.
Bill Korstad, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? You had a question earlier.
Well, I was going to comment on problem people in your customers, if you will, prospects. Whenever I talk to IT people, it's always, well, it's not invented here. We do, this, we could do that. We can easily do that, blah, 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 blah. And they never can. But that's a barrier. And nobody challenges them because they are the quote unquote experts at this. The second thing is a problem is that people will tell me the solution. Here's what you need to do. I don't want to know about that. Tell me what the problem is. Tell me why you're doing that. And I'm an expert at this product. I will tell you what the solution should be, but you don't tell me how I should do it.
Hmm.
And that's what would run into.
Yeah, I think both of those are valid. I do think the sort of challenge of well, the first one, when IT says, well, we could do that. Like, okay, but you haven't. Like, the facts on the ground are what they are. This is the express need. Here are your people. And this is why it's important, by the way, to have sort of all the stakeholders in a room if you can, because you learn a lot about the organizational dynamics. Sales, let's say sales or service. The customer service folks say, we need a way to be able to do live chat with our customers on the website when they come looking for product help. Okay, great. We're Salesforce. We have a way to solve for that. IT says, oh, we could do that. We have a chat tool, or we could do that. We could definitely put that on the website. Okay, but you haven't. So did you not know about the pain? Did you not know about the requirement? Did nobody ask you? Or did somebody ask you and you said, yeah, we'll get around to it, and you haven't done it? So, to your point earlier, your point in the question, like, often it's not simply inertia. It's like it's hubris. We could do that, but we actually haven't thought about how complicated or how to implement it, nor do we have the time or the resources to actually get it done.
Well, I
So
never
that's-
tried to put that developer in the position of being embarrassed.
Right.
I always said, "Oh, let me help you. I can help you on that. Let me
Yeah.
help you." And he's still quote unquote in control, but I'm just helping.
Yeah, and I mean that's sort of my internal monologue. The actual thing is like, well, what can we do to accelerate? What can we do to improve
Right.
your time to value? How can we reduce friction? How can we strip effort out of this? How and the sort of final argument, and the one that resonates with the people that sign the checks, is I love the enthusiasm. It's really great that you understand the value of this solution, because you're willing to dedicate your time and effort to making it happen, and that's fantastic. Is that the most productive or the most sort of value-centric use of your time? Like, you've got these other things that are differentiators, that are helping your organization succeed on a lot of levels, and that only you can do, versus this, which is something that you could do, but also there are other ways of solving the problem. So is this the best thing? And when you say that in the room where there's the VP of IT or the CFO, and they hear, ooh, we're effectively spending money on this, whether or not it shows up, because it means there's other things, there's an opportunity cost to not getting the other things done. So that's a really important question, and that's part of the negotiation that doesn't even come down to the demo. It's like, everybody can agree that the solution will work, that the price is right, that like it can actually do it, and there's somebody saying, yeah, it can, but why are we going to spend the money when this is something we can do ourselves? That's a very complicated and tricky, that's a sticky wicket. It's a tricky thing to navigate around, and I'm glad you brought it up. What was the second question? I'm sorry, you said there was a second part of what you said.
Well, it was dealing with IT.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they are a problem because they want to solve it.
Yeah.
But my only difficulty getting through any of that is the why part. When you are with a government organization, state and local, for instance, and I say, well, why are you doing that? Well, we always done that because she has to have that report. And
Yep.
Well, can you change that? No, she's the most senior person here. We can't change that. And then you go, yeah.
Yeah, and that's that you have to sort of dig one level deeper and say, okay, I hear you saying that you need this specific, Excel file in this specific format, or the world's going to come to an end. Let me understand the why. Like, what problem is this solving? Who is the audience? Has anyone gone to her and asked if she would be willing to accept the information in another format? What if, and then it's more the, what if it showed up automatically in her inbox, or what if it was available, as part of the portal, and that she could, rather than having to ask somebody for it and wait 3 days for them to run it and provide it for her, what if it was always available at the click of a button here on this web page, and have her say, yeah, I would be 100% happy with that. I would be happier with that. Nobody ever told me that was an option. So you have to just sort of find the transformative or the really compelling, automation very often it's somebody who's like, I know this is the way it's always been done because I raise my hand and say I need this, and then 3 days later it happens and it's in my email and it's fine, like I can get the job done. But if you're telling me that there's a way that I could do that where I would not have to involve another human being, where I could self-service, they're probably okay with that. Very rarely, you know where that doesn't work is law firms. And actually, I'm going to be talking hopefully on a law and technology podcast soon. Lawyers, senior lawyers, senior partners don't care. They just don't want to change, and it can cause some issues. We'll come back to some of this. I just want to make sure we have time to get through some of the sins. The sins of typography are not relevant to the sins of demoing, except that, Mac users love sins of typography. I can almost guarantee everybody on this call at one point or another has looked up at a billboard and said to themselves, that's a hash mark, not a curly quote. Anyway, the things you do not want to do when you're demoing software specifically. One of them is to scroll all over the place. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to show you. Whoosh, whoosh. It's like being on a roller coaster, a tilt-a-whirl, rather than take a breath, scroll with deliberation, have it be a, it's a small world boat and not the rock and roller coaster. Anxious clicking. Nothing happened. I'm gonna click again. Don't do that. Wait. Talk while you're click, then talk. Wait for something to happen. Then if you have to click again, click again. The doc. Oh, good Lord. The number of times I see my colleagues presenting, not in full screen, showing software in a browser. So Salesforce is a cloud solution, and you experience it most of the time through a web browser. So there's a lot of used space for the web browser. There's the menu bar, there's the the Chrome bookmarks, there's everything. There's the address bar. So you're already sacrificing space at the top, and then you want me to sacrifice like this chunk of space at the bottom on a laptop screen? Please, I beg you, don't show your doc when you're demoing. It's not necessary unless it's specifically a doc utility you're showing. Desktop clutter. And here I will step away from the slides for a second and just show you my lovely desktop. Look at that. Ever see that lovely desktop? This is a utility called Desktop Curtain, which you can turn on and off. My desktop happens to be very clean at the moment, but inexpensive utility. Desktop Curtain, one command key, and hides your desktop literally behind a curtain. It is fantastic. It is a great way to keep those things that you don't want people to see away. I'm just noticing some questions here. We'll get to those in a second. Don't type. Please don't type. If you're demoing, put your stuff behind a macro or a hotkey. Especially on iOS, you can use iOS text replacement. Typing away on a phone. The screen hiding app, Debbie, is called Desktop Curtain, 2 words. Lawrence, yeah, 2 million air miles is a lot, but getting up in front of people definitely is something to miss. And Melissa points out people have gotten used to upgrades and updates on iOS. That's an excellent point. People who never would have updated their software on the desktop definitely get used to that idea. Don't type on iOS. Don't fear the silence. Let stuff soak in. Make sure that you're giving the airspace for people to understand what you're talking about and absorb what you're talking about. And finally, presenting remotely creates a lot of challenges. You saw earlier when I was trying to highlight something, I was trying to use mouse pose. Everybody sees my spotlight here on Deadly Sins.
Yes.
So mouse pose is fantastic if you're showing something in the browser. If you're showing like, hey, look at this great outline in Keynote. Look how title small is here. It's very clear with them. Look, it's a presentation still called MacStock. And again, great utility, mouse pose from Boinks. The problem is that full screen apps don't let you do that. So when I do that same key, what I see is highlighting. Are you seeing me highlight the word remote? Probably not.
Yeah, I do see it.
Oh, you do see it. Okay. Then
Yes.
Keynote is behaving well. Google Slides sometimes doesn't. And the trick here is that that in order to enable that, I had to share my entire screen, not share a window or share an app, but share my entire screen in Zoom. If I were only showing Keynote or only showing a window, that would not work because Mousepose is a separate app running in a separate context. So you can't, this is why it's really important to dry run and test. And in fact, if I had done that, I would know whether or not you had been able to see it, so I wouldn't have been asking for feedback. But Mousepose is great. It's more dependable in person. Also more dependable in person. If everybody knows the Option Command 8 for Zoom, which I am doing right now, and probably you're not seeing. Option Command 8 is the accessibility Zoom for macOS, but that does not show up on the other side of most virtual meetings. It is actually happening at the the video driver level in the OS, so it's not getting sent through as part of the screen that is being captured. Be really careful if you tend to use magnification to highlight stuff while you're demoing remotely, because it may not work. I'm going to share these slides with you. This is another very long list of demo do's and don'ts I stole from one of my colleagues. An attention grabber at the start is great. Sometimes a question, sometimes a poll. If you have a buddy, make sure they should be checking for you. They can have a side chat in Zoom or in Slack or in even in iMessage. Don't let your cat step on the keyboard. Don't use the built-in microphone and speakers on your laptop. That'll give you feedback. And don't get too stressed out about it. There's no life and death. Very, very rarely is there life and death in demos. Sometimes there is. The folks who, the name of the Mouse Highlighter Award is Mousepose. Mouse, P-O-S-E, and the E has an accent. It's from Boinx, B-O-I-N-X, Boinx.com, which makes also great software for other stuff as well. Photomagico is their app, and they make great stuff. Good people. I was going to say there's no life and death in demos. I'm just retracting that a little bit because Salesforce does have a vaccine cloud product, which is about managing vaccine appointments. That's kind of life and death. Anyway, let's quickly talk about some of the tools in the last. We're going to talk about tools for 2 minutes, and then we'll do some questions before I have to leave. Show of virtual hands. How many people have multiple profiles in Chrome? Multiple user profiles in Chrome? Nobody? Nobody's raising a hand. Fascinating. Okay. This is actually a fantastic capability to have multiple Chrome personas, and I'm starting with the bottom here. Don't use Chrome. Well, that's an excellent point. Richard raises a hand. Thank you, Richard. The reason to do this is if you're showing sort of the back end, front end, admin user, manager, staffer perspective on anything, calendaring, resource management, whatever, and you're using your browser to log in, you have to be really careful to not, and this is true in Safari, to not cross up your logins. Am I logged in as Mike or am I logged in as Alfred admin? Chrome lets you do that super easily. You create a Chrome persona or Chrome identity, and everything's different. Your cookies are different. Your bookmarks are different. Your theme is different. You can 4-finger swipe on your trackpad if you're using a laptop, and you can be in different personas, different contexts really easily. Super, super impressive. We talked about hiding the dock, hiding the desktop. That spaces, full screen 4-finger swipe. This is my friend Tim's idea. Try not to go all the way around. Like if you plan out your demo and think, okay, I want to be here, then I want to be here, then I'm going to be here, and then I come to the end, thank you very much, and Q&A. But try not to loop around because that's confusing, or try not to go backward. And you do want to set some either different desktop backgrounds, or again, those different Chrome themes to make it more presentable. Let's talk about our rogues gallery, our murderer's row of utilities real quick, and then we'll do some questions. Mousepose and Desktop Curtain we've already seen. Muzzle. Muzzle is an app that will gives you belt and suspenders of turning off notifications. So you know you should always be in do not disturb or in focus mode when you're presenting. Most presentation apps, Zoom, Google Meet, will do a pretty good job of not showing notifications, but are you really willing to bet the farm on that? Muzzle will automatically turn off notifications for you on the fly when you are doing something where that should be the case. And it's really important for sales contexts where sometimes your sales partner is texting you saying, we're losing them, or I hate these customers. I did, in fact, have one time one of a colleague who shall remain nameless say, I absolutely cannot stand this customer, and saw it pop up on the screen. Well, I was not it was not my salesperson, and I was not the one demoing, but I saw it pop up on the screen. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that just happened. So muzzle is great. Also, don't send that message when somebody's presenting. By the way, here's the meta advice. Don't do that. Don't take that risk. And I want to shout out for Bunch.app. Brett Terpstra, colleague of mine and of David's at TUAW, mad scientist, super genius, has written a bunch of apps. BrettTerpstra.com, that's 3 T's, B-R-E, I'm going to write it down, B-R-E-T-T, Terpstra.com, so it's in the chat. Brett has a bunch of incredible automation apps, markdown apps. Bunch is one where you can hit a hotkey and launch a suite of apps and documents with one key. If you are frequently going to sort of a framework, a setup of, what you want to have running and available, Bunch is great. I have over on the right Hook. Hook has actually changed its name to to something else. Hook Manage. Hook is still in the name. So if you and I'll get the URL when we step out. Thank you, Sheeta, for the Bunch app. But Hook is a similar thing. But what Hook doesn't is not so much launching, is it's URLs for everything. So universal URLs. So if I want to have a URL to a document that lives in Evernote or in Notes or to anything, I can have a URL for anything. It's easier to show than to explain, but it's pretty cool. The rest of the rogues gallery there, Camtasia or ScreenFlow. A lot of people love ScreenFlow. I happen to like Camtasia for creating screencasts, not live demos. OBC or other solutions for live demos are great, but Camtasia is great for something you're recording and then assembling. Choosy and similar apps that let you pick which browser you would like to launch when you click on a link in your email or you open up a bookmark. Downy from Charlie Monroe lets you download videos locally from almost anywhere, which is super useful if there's something on YouTube or Vimeo which you need to present and you'd like to embed, but you don't want to depend on the internet connection in your presentation or in your demo. Downy is great. I've already mentioned Hook, or whatever Hook is called now. And if you and Downy is available in SetApp. And Brett has presented to Naples Mug. Awesome. He's amazing.
Yes.
He's one of my favorite human beings. And Stream Deck is software that goes with hardware, although you can use it purely as software on your phone. It is a keyboard, customizable light-up keyboard that you can use to launch, control, or manage any app. Really aimed at streamers, hence the name, but it's really also very handy for demos because you can run those configurations, make those changes live. I was going to talk about discovery and a few other things, but this is basically like just active listening, ask questions, write things down, remember, do what you need to do to remember. So I'll pause there and we'll take a few minutes for questions, other app suggestions, or if I were to come back in a few months, what else would you like to hear about? But in the meantime, thank you all for your attention. Thank you for making the time on this mid-holiday season Wednesday, and really appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Richard Gibbons, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
I'm sorry, I didn't have a question, but I will ask something that may be irrelevant. I've been tasked to change a PowerPoint presentation, and all I have is Keynote, and then revert it back to PowerPoint. Is that doable?
Yes, should be. I mean, your mileage may vary. It's not going to necessarily happen with perfect fidelity, but yes, it should work. Keynote speaks PowerPoint. And you also, by the way, can use the web version of PowerPoint, the Office 365 version of PowerPoint for free with limited functionality, or you can subscribe for a month and do it. But PowerPoint Online is mostly free and actually pretty good for stuff that you need to do quickly. It's hard to say whether that's safer in the long run than doing it with Keynote and converting back. The round trip conversion could introduce some weird font stuff or other stuff. So if you can do it with PowerPoint Online, great. If not, Keynote should be fine.
Great. Lawrence Jenkins, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes. One of the things I think that you would miss, I used to travel a lot and I would get there earlier to talk to the customer, and I would get people to say things that they would not say in the meeting, and I could work that into my presentation or my story. Do you miss that too? I think I would.
Oh my gosh. Yes, the hallway track or the happy hour track. Yes, sir, Mr. Jenkins, you are 100% correct. I miss that deeply. And one of the great things now about getting back to being in person and being with our customers in the real world is that exactly getting to know them as people, getting to hear about their day, getting to hear about their concerns. I do try to replicate a little bit of that. If anyone joined the call a little before the 11:30 mark, I was talking about my morning getting rained on and the weather here in New York. And and actually, you know, sometimes you're going to hear from somebody. Sometimes the difference is not knowing why somebody is ill-inclined or cranky or doesn't seem to be receptive, versus being there and like, oh, their dog just passed away, or they're dealing with a health crisis, or their car got totaled, or like it's a platitude, but it's really true. Everybody is dealing with a heaviness and stuff that you have no idea of. So what does it cost you to be kind and be empathetic? The slide that's missing from all of this is empathy and really should be up front. You can't be effective in convincing anybody or explaining to anybody the what's in it for me without empathy. Empathy is implied, but it shouldn't be implied. It should be explicit. And I'm really glad you said that, because it reminded me that I need to talk about empathy and add an empathy slide.
All right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Next week's topic is going to be on window management with Christian Boyce. This one I'm fascinated with because I have tried Moom. I mean, we do have Stage Manager, which is pretty good on the Mac if you're using Ventura. But what if you're not using Ventura? And you have Spaces and this, that, and the other. Right now, I'm looking at probably a half a dozen windows open, and I closed a lot of them because I'm doing this and I don't want to. But on a typical day, I could have 20 windows open, and I'm not exaggerating. So he's going to be talking about how you can do this through different pieces of software. And I've tried these softwares such as Moom, and I can't grasp it. So this could be very interesting personally for me, and I think for everyone else too. So that's going to be next week. Today, Suffolk meeting. That is today. So I'm not sure if you get a hold of Mike through the website, I'm not sure if he'll be able to get a hold, get you the information, but they are hosting something on damage. As always, thank you for your support, but don't leave yet. We have one more thing.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan. And thank you, audience. This was a great meeting, very interesting, philosophical in a way, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think all of you did. I want to talk to you a little bit about our organization. You know that we say once in a while we talk about ourselves and mention how successful we are. And why are we really successful? I think most of the very first most important reason is, I think, it's our membership. Our membership is forming this organization, and it is their interest in what we're doing. And I think what we're doing, what we did today is an example of what we're doing. These weekly meetings are fantastic, and we are doing great. We are a growing organization. We have grown substantially over the last 2 or 3 years and continue to grow. But what I want to talk about today is one feature that our organization offers that very few other organizations do, and they don't do it as well as we do. And that's our fantastic class program. We started doing that many years ago, that separate from our weekly meetings in the spring, in the first 3 months of a year, we would conduct classes. We have excellent instructors. The topics are very important, and the reaction of our membership has been fantastic. Last year, we had, I think, an average of 120 or 130 of our members join the class, and we had 11. This year, we're going to have 12 classes, and I don't really want to talk that much about it because we have sent out information. We've talked about our class program at length at one of our weekly meetings a few weeks ago. But what I want you to know today really is the registration has just started. You can now go to our website, naplesmug.com, and decide, go to classes and register for any of the 12 classes that will be performed from January through the end of March. You can sign up for all of them, or if you sign up for 10, you get the additional 2 classes for free. So that's really my message to you today. Make you aware of the class program, number 1, and number 2, please go ahead and sign up for these classes. They're going to be fantastic. Thank you very much. And I believe there's one more of our board members, Mary. She's our secretary. I believe she wants to talk to all of you, to all of us, really briefly about the forthcoming annual meeting, which we will conduct at the end of January. Mary, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Eckhart. This is just a little administrative business. We are at the point every year to do an election. We elect our directors every year. And this week you'll be receiving a ballot in the mail, an email ballot. We're asking you to please vote and fill it out and send it as soon as you possibly can. I'm going to share my screen and show you a sample of the ballot. It's really a simple. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's just five votes. There are 5 directors that are running for office. There's a short bio of each of them. So if you would just vote yes, no, or abstain for each of the 5 directors, we'd greatly appreciate it. And then the annual meeting is on January 25th, and we will be announcing the results of the voting. So you'll get that email this week. Thank you. Okay, that's it, Dan. You can take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Eckhart. You can sign up for the classes as of today. So just go to our website, and we'll start sending out some emails reminding. We won't do it too often, but when you get a replay of when you get tomorrow's email on how you can watch this presentation online, there will also be a little plug-in for our classes, so you're going to start seeing that a little bit more. I want to thank everyone, and everyone have a good week.